Welcome to episode 269 of the All the Books Show, the official podcast of the David A. Howe Public Library, where we talk book news, author news, and literary news. I'm Eric Nichols.
Ooh, the suspense was killing me. I didn't know what you were going to say.
I couldn't remember if you introduced yourself, even
No,
though
it's
we've
you.
done it for 269 episodes.
269 episodes. Yeah. How's your Halloween spirit? I want to keep tabs on this. This is very important that it's high.
It's going all right.
Is it?
I've been listening to my music in my car,
Okay.
which was nice.
That's fine.
And I watched Hoobie Halloween.
Oh, a little Adam Sandler.
Hoobie Halloween,
Okay.
which wasn't great, but it's Halloween-ish.
Sure.
I mean, it is a Halloween movie. And, reading Christine and doing something else.
Wait.
I kind of feel it.
You're okay. I thought you were jumping right into the bookmark, and you were freaking me out.
I'm just saying I've got Halloween things happening.
Okay. I recently re-listened to the 2019 Radio 64 Halloween special, and I have just downloaded the 2020 Radio 64 Halloween special, which if you're... When does that air on WRAQ? Was that Mondays at 6?
Mondays.
Is that what it is?
Mondays
okay.
at 6.
Yeah, so you can tune in there. So I've got my Halloween music going, and I'm in the zone. I got to tell you.
Spooky.
I've been reading and watching some Halloween-esque stuff, but I think we gotta roll that music so we can get into some bookmark.
Okay.
Tell me more about Hubie Halloween.
It's fine. It's not that funny, but it also has funny moments. It's just not laugh.
Okay.
It's just not a laugh riot.
I mean,
but it's definitely like. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, as longtime listeners will remember, Adam Sandler's Ridiculous Six broke us.
Ugh.
We watched Ridiculous
terrible.
Six right before recording in All the Books nights, and it was a big mistake. Hated that.
Yeah, it was trash.
I don't think I've seen any of the other Adam Sandler Netflix movies outside of Murder Mystery, which I did like. But I was a little confused about Hubie Halloween because it kind of looks like a kid's movie, but it's also PG-13. So what's the sitch?
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like a feel-good Halloween film. But I suppose, yes, the PG-13, it makes sense.
Okay.
But it is kind of like, it feels more in vein with like what I remember Ernest Scared Stupid than like
but that's
the other
scary.
stuff. So
Ernest Scared Stupid
Yeah,
scared the life out of me as a kid.
Yeah, I remember that being very creepy.
Yeah, it was.
No, I think you'll have a good time. I don't think you'll walk away being like, that was hilarious. But there's jokes and other stuff to be found.
Is it better than Jack and Jill?
I've never seen Jack and Jill, so I assume yes.
All right. Let me tell you what I've been watching Halloween-wise, and it might surprise you, Eric. I've been watching The Haunting of Hill House, based on the novel by Shirley Jackson, over on Netflix. And I've got to say, I've been pretty impressed so far. It is genuinely scary, but it's like the right kind of scary for me because it's not one that I'm leaving, like we finish watching it and then like I go to bed and I'm creeped out when I have to get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. It's not that kind of scary. It's more like psychological scary, and even like the genuine ghosty stuff that's happening is more intriguing than the kind of scary that really lingers with you. You're never going to watch this, correct?
No.
Okay.
But I will listen to Linger by the Cranberries.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's a decent compromise. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I've watched 5 I've watched 5 of 10 episodes of Haunting of Hill House, and if it keeps up the way it is, it's going to get a couple of Halloween thumbs up from this guy.
Did you say if you were watching this by yourself or with your wife?
My wife and I are watching it. Yeah.
Okay.
We're both in. We're both
yeah. Are you holding popcorn while watching it and then throwing the popcorn
whenever something happens? No, but we have a couple of times where like something really tense is happening, and then like something will frighten the dogs or something, and like our dogs will bark, and we'll be like, ah! Like that has definitely happened on multiple occasions.
I have these Kong chew toy pineapples that you can put treats into for the dogs. And I have to put them away when I was playing. I was playing the original Doom, the original 1993 Doom game, because like I was into it. It was intense. The lights are off, and anytime one of them tries to get one from the other, they bark, and then on camera, I'm just like, ah!
Yeah.
So
that sounds like quality
also,
television.
Whenever I'm doing, Kendra she walks around like a ghoul here, and like I'm just focused on something on the game, and she's like, "Hey, where'd the milk go?" And I'm like, "Ah!" I don't know why she's asking where the milk went. Obviously, it's in the fridge.
Yeah, where else would you put milk? It doesn't have a shelf life outside. I finished some things. I read a weird Star Trek book called Windows on the Lost World by V.E. Mitchell. So this is one that I did for a book club with some friends of mine, and we were all very much on the same page about this because the plot of it sounds like this cool like archaeological dig, and they find this doorway that leads. Some of them get trapped in like a parallel universe. That's what it makes it sound like. What actually happens is Kirk and Chekhov fall through a window and then become aliens that are described as just large crabs and spend the whole novel as large crab monsters. And it was so bizarre and not in a fun way. So I must report that I do not recommend Windows on a Lost World by V.E. Mitchell. The craziest book that I've read in recent memory was our Hispanic Heritage Month book club that we did last week, and that is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Have you heard about this book? Do you know this book at all?
We talked about this when we did our Heritage Month.
Okay, all right. Sure, did I tell you the finish of this, or was I just like currently reading it?
No, it was one of the books that was if you're looking for books.
Oh yeah, it was on that list. Yes, it was on that list. I read it, and it starts in a very like spooky, atmospheric. A woman goes to check on her cousin who is recently married and not doing well. Set in the 1950s, only very loosely. I was actually, when they were like, it's 1954 or whatever, I was like, it is? The heck? What? Because it doesn't, nothing about the 1950s comes into play here at all. So that was kind of a weird thing. It's doing like a spooky atmospheric thing where you're not really sure which direction it's going to go. And I'm going to hold back from giving you all of it, but I have to spoil a little bit of this book. All right. So fair warning. Spoilers! It goes in a very, very unusual supernatural way. And it feels like the kind of thing where it's a misdirect and like somebody's going to wake up from a dream or there's going to be an explanation. But in fact, no, it is just this very unusual supernatural story. And by the end of it, you're just left feeling like, what was that all about? So very strange. I have to say that I don't recommend it, though I did find reading it to be very compelling, but I was not really satisfied with how it went because it is, I'm going to tell you off mic, because it is not, it's dark and weird. And it's very strange, so I'm going to have to fill you in.
All right.
I'm currently reading Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Have you read this?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not digging it. Were you a fan?
Yeah, I liked it, but it definitely picked up on the second half when the monster shows up. It's like, let me tell you about my life.
Well,
now.
Yeah.
The first half where it's just Dr. Frankenstein's like, and then I ran away again, and then I ran away again. It's like, oh my gosh. But once the monster shows up, it's like, my life started as such.
Well, yes,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Let's get into this.
The thing is, it's like if you write out the plot, if you write an outline of the plot, like beat by beat, it sounds like an amazing story. But I'm just finding it so dry. I'm just not.
Yes, it is. I found the first half very dry, but I felt like it was much more interesting the second half.
Okay, all right.
She wrote a end of days kind of story called The Last Man that I've been meaning to read.
Okay.
There was a Halloween where I decided to start reading books on Halloween that I read Dracula and Frankenstein. And then the next Halloween was like, well, now what?
Yeah, you're done. You figured it all out. I am currently reading Christine by one Stephen King. This is, I want to say 5 years of us reading a Stephen King together. It might be longer because
it's longer. You've got to count The Shining. That's 2014.
Was that 2014?
No, that's 2013. That's 2013.
Wow.
But we didn't read it for, I guess we did read it October 2013, which means Dr. Sleep was 2014.
And then 2015 was what? Salem's Lot? Because the podcast was going by then. All right, so 7 years. 7 years of reading Stephen King books. I'm not going to tell you any of my thoughts on it right now because we've got next time we're going to do a
You're further than I am.
I'm halfway through. Yeah. So next week
you're further along.
We're going to be joined by the Queen of Halloween. We're going to talk all about Stephen King's Christine. So right now I'm just going to keep my lips zipped about that. I also watched Brave New World on the Peacock streaming app, and I really liked it.
Peacock?
Yeah, that's how you have to say it. I forgot legally you're required to say it that way. Have you read the book, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World?
Yes.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I have.
Is the book as super sexual like the show was?
Oh, yeah. Orgy porgy, man.
Yeah. I thought it was so well done, and I feel like it's not been getting great reviews, but I just felt like the subtlety of the acting they really managed to convey a lot of deep layered stuff with very little. So I was impressed by it. So it is very much earns its TV mature rating because there's a lot of nudity and a lot of sexuality.
Well, that's what you have to do when you stream stuff. Yeah,
yes,
everybody has to be naked all the time.
Yeah, right. But I just feel I haven't read the book, so I don't know how faithful of an adaptation it is. But I just felt like as storytelling, it really succeeded. A lot of strong performances in there, so I do recommend that. What about you? What are you reading lately?
Well, I was gonna say I was playing Doom, the 1993 Doom, as like Halloween stuff. And watched Hubie Halloween. Hubie. It's not Hubie. It's Hubie. I don't know why I'm having such a problem with that.
Yeah.
And yes, I definitely I finished The Fires of Heaven. I had a bunch of chapters ahead of me, but I'm like, I got to do this so I can get to Christine and the other things I want to do for Halloween. So I plowed through it. One thing that happens with the ends of Wheel of Time books is that so much action is happening in the page, and I kind of get lost in all the text. So then I kind of have to like go back and reread some sections to be like, oh, I think I missed something, just because my eyes can kind of glaze over on the last like couple of chapters with the action, because so much is happening and there's so many new words being thrown at you. This is the first book in the series that I didn't love. The fifth book, a lot of just kind of piddling around, a lot of Nynaeve and Eliana? I probably said her name wrong. Nynaeve and her group are hanging out with a traveling circus, and they have some moments that I'm like, oh, but there's just a lot of that and a lot of hanging out in a dreamscape. Rand takes a while to get moving himself. So stuff does pick up, and there are some really tense scenes throughout, but this is the first one where I felt like the momentum was a little low. The pace was never an issue for me with the other books. So anyway, finished book 5. That's why I started Christine.
Are you going to wait another 6 to 7 years before you pick up book 6?
No, I don't think so. But it did make me want to go. I did get the itch to keep reading some other fantasy books.
Okay.
Something's happened, I think, where I don't want to read sci-fi books these days. I want to read fantasy books.
Okay.
And I think it's because sci-fi used to be my escapism, and now I'm like, we'll never get here. So now I want to read just fake worlds and fake magic and all this stuff, because the future of the real world just doesn't seem like we're ever going to get to the sci-fi of the past that we've written and everything.
Yeah.
So I guess I feel like fantasy now is like the one true escapism I can find. As opposed to reading sci-fi at the moment. So I was looking at maybe picking up some more Brandon Sanderson that I haven't read. There's a bunch of fantasy I haven't read that I just started adding to stuff. I'm only 70 pages into Christine.
Okay.
But it's fine. People must have talked by now about how Stephen King writes women, right? That is the problem. That's kind of gross. He's kind of a misogynist in his early writings. Has that been picked up on?
I don't know. I guess you've given me something to research before our next episode.
All right, maybe not. Maybe I'm just overly sensitive because it's the past however many years it's been in this life. But I read The Rise of the Dungeon Master, Gary Gygax and the Creation of D&D. It's a young adult graphic novel.
Gary Gygax.
I don't know if I love Gary Gygax.
You love Gary Gygax things.
I like reading about the history of Dungeons and Dragons, and that tends to be, very Gary Gygax focused. It's good. I think, I read Empire of Imagination and Of Dice and Men, which are both kind of histories of D&D, which I really like. They did different things. This one, again, is supposed to be young adult, and so it's kind of basically explaining D&D and explaining the history. It's a quick read. Talks about him and his relationship with his friend and business partner David Arneson, and their falling out later, because Gygax was about the business and Arneson was about the game. So I don't know. I think if there was a teenager who's like, I've been playing D&D, I'm really into it, you could give this to them and it might be interesting. I don't know if this would necessarily win people over to the hobby, but maybe. And at this point, D&D is just very much part of the zeitgeist as well. When did this come out? 2017. So it's been out for a little bit.
Is this your favorite D&D thing you've read so far?
No. I think that would be a tie between Dice and Men and Empire of Imagination.
Okay.
Both get much more in depth.
Got it.
And then I've read Punisher Max Volume 7, which is like the end of the Punisher Max series. I can't remember when it started, but I believe this ended in 2012.
Okay.
Garth Ennis was the guy who was writing it a whole lot. And then Jason Aaron came and wrote the last 22 issues with him dealing with this world's version of the Kingpin and everything. And the Ennis, these Punisher Max series, they take place in a real timeline. So Punisher Frank Castle was in Vietnam. So it's been 30 years that he's been the Punisher since. So this ends with him being at in his 60s and everything, and feeling his age.
Like a Terminator really Dark Fate kind of Punisher, right? Would you say?
Don't. I'm asking you as a friend. Don't.
All right, I yield.
Please. I also read Batman Curse of the White Knight. We talked about the Batman White Knight on this, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it wasn't so long ago.
Yeah. When it first came out, I loved it.
Yeah, because we got it for the library's collection, and I grabbed it as soon as it was
snatched it.
on. Or did you get it before me?
I hope so.
I got it first?
I like to think I got it first. I truly don't remember.
I have a weird memory of you getting it first and me being like, "What?" But maybe I got it right before you.
You are legendary for your grudge holding, so if you remember it that way, I trust your version.
Well, you know what?
Events.
Then that must mean that I got it first. That I don't remember.
Fair. That's a fair. Yep. That's
there
a fair
we
point.
go.
Yep.
Not as good as the first one.
Yeah.
And I even had an issue or two with the first one. So, but the art, Sean Gordon Murphy's art is very good throughout, and there are some really cool moments in this, but it's not as good as the first one. I also read Doomsday Clock by Jeff Johns. Go over to your comic book coffee break. That's what we should say. For my in-depth reviews of these past couple of comics I mentioned, go over to Comic Book Coffee Break to listen to us talk about this, because all I can say is that DC has lost a lot of respect on my end for doing, even back when they did the before Watchmen, but especially this Doomsday Clock, and Jeff Johns for taking this job. I mean, I know he's probably just doing it for the paycheck. Maybe he didn't have a lot of choice. Maybe you got to write this. But yeah, just an insult, I feel like, to Watchmen in general.
Well, I appreciate your restraint, considering how much you let loose on Comic Book Coffee Break. So I know that was painful for you to hold that.
That's why we did the spinoff.
That's right. That is right. All right. Well, let's get into some book news.
Look into the future to see what it proves. It's time for book news.
All the Books show is where I do the Terminator Dark Fate rants.
Yeah.
Comic Book Coffee Break is where I do the Watchmen sequel rants.
Yeah, you've got two different venues. All right, well, we want to share a couple of awards with you that were announced in recent weeks. And you know what that means, Eric? That means another Ben theme.
Nic and Eric present the awards.
First up, the Nobel Prize in Literature. The Nobel Prize in Literature has been announced, and it went to poet Louise Gluck. She's published dozens of volumes of poetry and has received virtually every prestigious literary prize, including the National Book Award, the Pulitzer Prize, the National Book Critics Circle Award, and the National Humanities Medal, many others, and now she can add a Nobel Prize in Literature to her list. We, of course, have many of Louise Gluck's collections right here at the David A. Howe Public Library, so stop in, check them out at curbside. You can place a request for those. We'll happily get them for you. Eric, you want to talk to me a little bit about the Harvey Awards?
The Harvey Awards. All right. So the Harvey Awards are
we've never
30 years old?
Yeah, 1988. We've never talked about these awards before. But Harvey Awards voting is open to those working in the comic industry. So all professional creators like writers, artists, colorers, letterers, designers, and editors are eligible to vote.
Podcasters?
Are eligible to vote. It doesn't say podcasters, but sales and marketing, as well as librarians and other comic book retailers, are eligible to vote. So maybe next year we should apply to vote in these Harvey Awards, have our say. Although I can't disagree with some of these, so maybe it's a moot point. Let's talk winners, Eric. Who do we got for the Harvey Awards?
Best adaptation from a comic book or graphic novel goes to Watchmen by HBO, based on Watchmen,
now,
the comic.
That's a Watchmen sequel I can get behind. I thought this was really well done. And we also have this in the collection, so you can come and check it out. Old school on DVD.
Yeah, look at that. Best international book, Grass by Keum-Suk Gendry Kim, translated by Janet Hong. I feel like I've heard of this, actually. and maybe I even have seen it in the wild.
Oh.
So
just like in a forest somewhere?
Yeah, just grass. Mm-hmm. Just grass inside a forest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was outside in the woods and I saw the hardcover of Grass by K.M. Suk Gendry Kim on a stump that had been carved into a pedestal.
That's not
and it was surrounded by trees and shade except for the actual pedestal, which had the one solo beam of light coming down from the sun. And it was a very quiet alcove. That all the birds had been filled with all the birds had been making sounds throughout the forest. At one point, I saw a deer, but once I got to this alcove, it was just quiet, not even a breeze.
Mm-hmm. You really gave that a lot of thought, and I appreciate.
Well, I'm a dungeon master.
I know. Yeah, I've heard. Sure.
Best manga goes to Witch Hat Altilar by Kamome Shirihama.
I'm not too proud to admit that I've never in my life heard of this.
Well, neither have I.
All right.
If that helps you.
Well, let me tell you what it's about. In a world where everyone takes wonders like magic spells and dragons for granted, Coco is a girl with a simple dream. She wants to be a witch. But everybody knows magicians are born, not made, and Coco was not born with a gift for magic. Resigned to her unmagical life, Coco is about to give up on her dream to become a witch until the day she meets Kefri, a mysterious traveling magician. After secretly seeing Kefri perform magic in a way she's never seen before, Coco soon learns what everybody knows might not be the truth and discovers that her magical dream may not be as far away as it may seem.
Yeah, looks like there's a couple. Looks like there's 5 volumes out right now.
Yeah. Sounds like a new addition to the David A. Howe Public Library manga collection is in order, wouldn't you say?
The art has a very old school look to it.
I was going to say the same thing. It looks not unlike John Neal's illustrations in the early Wizard of Oz books.
Best children or young adult book goes to Superman Smashes the Klan.
I love it.
And None Too Soon by Jean Lang Yang and Guri Huri.
We could use a little bit of that today. Yeah, no, I thought this was excellent. I loved it. This is based on an early, like 1940s era Superman radio show, and it has that kind of setting. Like it's a historic fiction kind of thing. But this is great, and it is available in our collection in print. It's also available on Overdrive. So if you haven't read this, the art is beautiful and the story is excellent. So 5 stars. I loved this one. Digital Book of the Year goes to The Nib, edited by Matt Bors.
Okay. And Book of the Year goes to Dragon Hoops by Jean Lewin Young.
This was recommended to me by Tina Dalton, who has been on the All the Book Show before during our quarantine director interviews. Tina was a big fan of this one and recommended it to me. So we have this in our collection. I haven't read it yet, but I plan to. Mm-hmm. In his latest graphic novel, New York Times bestselling author Gene Yun Lang turns the spotlight on his life, his family, and the high school where he teaches. So there you go. Is that the last one?
Yes.
Okay. You can find more at theharveyawards.com. And maybe next year, Eric and I will have our vote counted. And speaking of votes, we're going to be talking a little bit about voting in 2020 a little bit later in this episode. Right now, though, Eric, what's on the New York Times bestseller list?
Whoa! Number 10, A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. While others expect dark sorcerers to cause damage, she has other plans. I'm thinking the young adult series that won the Nebula.
Yeah, like Spinning Silver or whatever. Was that her?
Was that the sequel? Shows you what I know. I don't know anything. Uprooted. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Uprooted, the 2015, which won the Nebula.
Right.
Young adult. Mm-hmm. Yes, Spinning Silver was the sequel.
Okay.
Look at that! Way to go, Nick.
I just pulled that right out.
Yeah. Number 9, The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. The lives of twin sisters who run away from a southern black community at age 16 diverge as one returns and the other takes on a different racial identity, but their fates intertwine.
Top of my stack. I've got this as soon as I'm done with Halloween books. That is my next pick.
So your November read.
Yeah.
All right. Number 8, Anxious People by Frederick Backman. A failed bank robber holds a group of strangers hostage at an apartment open house.
Huh.
Yeah. You know, it does make sense because hopefully there's at least some finger foods available.
Yep.
Like, all right, we're going to be held up here for a while, but we've got a lot of cheese.
Yeah, exactly. Try the pigs in the blanket, though. They're delicious.
Yeah. Number 7, Vince Flynn, Total Power by Kyle Mills. When America's power grid is shut down, Mitch Rapp goes after a cyber terrorist.
Okay.
To turn on America's power grid.
Turn it back on, baby.
Yeah, I feel like there's going to be a lot of pseudo-silence in this.
Speaking of power grid, what about Jamie Foxx coming back as Electro in Spider-Man 3?
I can't even wrap my head around this stuff anymore. I look at the plans for future Spider-Man stuff, and I'm just like, I don't know.
You don't
also, though, what's a movie anymore?
I don't know. I wish I could tell you.
It's amazing they keep casting and announcing movies in this time, and I'm like, why don't you just put out the movies you have done?
Seriously.
Worry about that.
My kingdom to watch Wonder Woman 1984, I'll tell you what.
It's 1986. No, it is 1984 because of the book. I was born 1986.
You were?
That's the difference.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're getting old.
All right.
Getting up there.
I'm only 34. 34 years.
Okay. All right. Hey, next year you'll be halfway to 70. That's fun. That's something to look forward to, right?
Sure.
That's the halfway point.
I'm not going to make it to 70. I'll be lucky if I get to 60.
Dark. Save it for the Halloween episode. Gall. Was that number 1? Did we get to number 1?
No, that was number 7.
I can't keep track. Number 7.
Number 6, The Coast to Coast Murders by James Patterson and J.D. Barker.
Oh, I thought you were going to say J.D. Robb. That would have been a real powerhouse coupling there.
Yeah. James Patterson doesn't need that money.
No, he doesn't.
Detective and an FBI agent are baffled by cross-country killing spree. Baffled! The Book of Two Ways by Jodi Picoult. Oh, yeah, it's been a while. Jodi Picoult?
She is not. She's not an every year publisher, so it's not.
No,
not for lack of sales. She just hasn't in a few years.
After surviving a plane crash, a death doula travels to Egypt to reconnect with an old flame who is an archaeologist.
Oh,
wow, a lot there.
Yeah.
So what's a death doula? Now I gotta know.
Do you think that, like in my Star Trek book, they're gonna fall through a window and become soft shell crabs, or do you think that's unrelated?
Yeah, I do think that.
You do? Oh. Well, maybe I'll read it.
Jodi Picoult's a big Star Trek fan.
I'll give it another shot.
What is a death doula? A death doula is a non-medical person trained to care for someone holistically at the end of life.
Okay.
Death doulas are also known around the world as end-of-life coaches, soul midwives, transition guides, death coaches, doula to the dying, end-of-life doulas, death midwives, and end-of-life guides.
Listen, there were a lot of good options in there. Death doula is not a good one. Choose one of the ones with the more positive spin, is all I'm saying. Choose one of the more positive ones.
So this book is about a death doula surviving a plane crash and then traveling to Egypt to meet an old flame who's an archaeologist. So there's just a lot going on.
And then she and James T. Kirk turned into soft-shell crabs.
And then there's soft-shell crabs.
Okay.
Yeah, during a seafood fest.
Oh.
So they're in danger.
That's some real danger. Stay away from hot butter. Am I right?
Yeah. Oh, boy. I could just go for a big
now
old
you're
tub
hungry?
of hot butter
That's
right
on
now.
me. That's on me.
Violet Bent Backwards Over the Grass by Lana Del Rey. A collection of poems by the singer and songwriter.
Okay.
Guess what I'm gonna pass up? That. I like one Lana Del Rey song. It's Summertime Sadness, and it's just about being sad during summertime. And that's it.
That seems like exactly a song you would like.
Oh, please. You've never had Summertime Sadness?
Oh, sure I have. I just don't seek out playlists to make it worse. Like someone...
I didn't seek out a playlist. I just like that.
You don't have a sad playlist that you listen to in the summer when you're feeling sad.
No.
Liar.
I guess not. Okay. All right, I'm going to make one. Yeah.
All right.
It's going to be that. It's probably going to have a couple 90s songs on it.
Definitely 90s songs. Sure.
Number 3, The Evening in the Morning by Ken Follett.
Well, which is it?
This is the prequel to Pillars of Earth.
Oh, jeez.
A boat builder, a Norman noblewoman, and a monk live in England under attack by the Welsh and the Vikings.
So you spend 1,000 pages learning how they build a cathedral. Now you're going to spend 1,000 pages learning about how they built the hammers that built the cathedral.
Listen, I don't hate that description. Maybe that was just a bad book. Maybe I should give this prequel a try.
I would be all for it. I would love to hear what you think of this prequel. I would love
Number
that.
2.
Okay.
Battleground, Jim Butcher. The 17th book in the Dresden Files series.
Hello.
Harry must save Chicago from destruction by the last Titan. Here's something else that I feel like maybe I should. Maybe this Halloween I'll go back and read the first book.
Okay. Yeah.
And wasn't he done with Dresden? Didn't it seem like he was done for a while?
It did because he was doing those like Sky Pirate books or something, whatever those were called.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Sky Pirates, the books.
To take it back to The Wizard of Oz, L. Frank Baum did the same kind of thing. He wrote a bunch of Wizard of Oz books, then he was like, I don't want to do that anymore. So he writes like Trot and Captain Bill, and everybody's like, that sucks, more Oz. So maybe a similar thing happened with Dresden here.
Like how DC Comics seemed to have some kind of artistic integrity for a little bit, and then they did a sequel to Watchmen.
Save it for comic book coffee break. Don't bore the nice
Number
people.
one.
Number 1.
Number one, debuting at number one. New this week is The Return by Nicholas Sparks.
Okay.
Well, let's see. A doctor serving in the Navy in Afghanistan goes back to North Carolina where two women change his life.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Who's going to die? Let me ask you this. Is he a widower? Does one of those women's husband die? Yeah. Somebody's got to die is all I'm saying. We did a whole episode on Nicholas Sparks called Sparks Fly. We were joined by Kendra from 902 and Here We Go. I read Nights in Rodante. I weirdly liked it. I'm not going to read The Return.
Yeah. Couple of widowers hooking up in a beachfront timeshare?
Yes.
Why not?
Just Airbnb with a widower and fall in love.
I know why.
Listen, someone did die in that book, though, for being honest. There was a very tragic death in Nights in Rodante, and I don't want to spoil it, but there is death involved.
I'm 50-something, you're 50-something. We both got the hots for each other. Yeah. I'm going to go set the fireplace.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're going to be drinking wine. There's going to be a lot of chunky sweaters.
I bought these soft-shell crabs that keep screaming about needing to be beamed up.
Yep. They did have to come back in there. The problem is...
We're going to get eaten by Richard Gere if we don't. Get out of here.
I don't know how to transition from this into talking about voting is the problem that I'm finding myself in right now. Do you have a transition?
Under the sea.
Okay. All right. So no on the transition into voting. You don't have any natural way to get us there.
Okay. I'm just doing Sebastian the Crab as James T. Kirk.
No, I get what you're doing. I just wondered if there was an end game. All right. So this is going to be a transition that's just a non sequitur. Well, it's voting season.
Sorry, I was still looking.
Did you like it?
Go on, yeah.
Anyway, last week I sat down with some election officials here in Allegany County, the Republican and the Democrat commissioner overseeing the elections in our county, and I peppered them with a million questions about everything that's circulating right now, where you're curious about how voting works, early voting, absentee ballots, election security, all that stuff. I sat down with them and I asked him all of those questions. We've actually released this ahead of the episode that you're listening to right now, just because we wanted to get it out there right away so people would have plenty of time before things start happening. So go and find that. It's an off the books episode called the All the Votes Show. So you can find that at soundcloud.com/allthebooks. It's also going to be airing on some radio stations around town. So we'll let you know when that comes up. So the segment is already elsewhere, so it's already out there. So just in brief summary, let me give you just a little bit of information here about voting. First of all, if you're a resident of Allegany County, early voting is going to start on October 24th. So I'm going to quickly run through the times here. It's a lot of information, so we'll post this as well. For early voting, you can just show up and vote as you would on the machine. You don't need an appointment. You don't need any sort of special. Everybody can do that. Early voting for Allegany County is going to be October 24th and 25th from 9 to 2. Monday, October 26th from 8:30 to 8 p.m. So nice long day there. Tuesday, October 27th, 8 to 4. Wednesday, October 28th, 8:30 to 8. Thursday, October 29th, 8 to 4. Friday, October 30th, 8 to 4. Saturday, the 31st, which is Halloween, and Sunday, November 1st, 9 to 2. If you want information, you can contact the Board of Elections directly at 585-268-9294 or 585-268-9295. They're located at 8 Willits Avenue, Belmont, New York. That's right on Route 19 if you're local. If you're not local and you're curious about how to vote, where to vote, all of that in your area, I'd recommend rockthevote.org. You can find a lot of information there. If you need help, even if you're not local, even if you're not in Allegany County or coming into the David A. Howe Public Library, please feel free to send me your questions. You can put them right on Twitter at All the Book Show. You can send it to us on Facebook at David A. Howe Public Library. You can email us at wellsville@stls.org. That stands for Southern Tier Library System. So wellsville@stls.org. Send me your questions. I will find the answers wherever you are in the United States. I'll find your local answers to this. So please send me your questions and I'll give them to you there. Eric, how are you planning on voting this year? I don't mean who you're voting for. I mean, what's your voting plan?
Right. My plan is to vote early.
Okay. And
try to beat the crowds.
Yeah. How does that work in your area?
It starts October 15th.
Okay. All right. And what...
in North Carolina, it starts at October 15th.
Okay. Now, that's exactly what I would do, and that would be my personal recommendation to people looking at how to vote locally in Allegany County or wherever you are. Mm-hmm. If your state, your county offers early voting, I really think that's the best way. I've been an election inspector in Allegany County for about 10 years now, and usually where we are, there aren't huge lines. Some of the more busy polling places, you do find some lines there. And I think you're going to want to be prepared for lines, even in places where there aren't usually. And this year, it's going to be slower because of the COVID-19 precautions that we're having to take. So if you have the option, if you're able to go in for early voting, that really is the best option. That's what I would do if I wasn't going to be working the election that day. So
also, like the DMV, it's nice to go when there's not a lot of crowds because you don't have to listen to people talk.
That's true. That is absolutely true. Yeah. So anyway, the number again for the Allegany County Board of Elections, there's a separate number for the Republican commissioner or the Democrat commissioner. Both can answer any of your questions. So the two numbers are 585-268-9294 or 585-268-9295. And again, check out our special, the All the Votes Show episode, which is already in the feed. And we'll be sharing that on Facebook and everything as well. But whatever you do, please vote. That's my plea to you. As a friend, please vote wherever you are. And I'm serious. If you have questions on how it works in your area, send them to me and I will figure it out and I'll help you through it. I think that's pretty much all we've got to cover in this week's episode. Eric, anything else you want to add before we close up shop? Well, think about it. You think about it. Anyway, you can join us next week when for our, what is this, Halloween now 5? Yeah, I guess it would be. Where the Queen of Halloween... 6? Okay. Where the Queen of Halloween and the director of the Fred and Harriet Taylor Memorial Library up in Hammondsport, Sally Jacoby Murphy, will be our guest. We'll be talking all things Stephen King's Christine. Eric, take us out with a happy Halloween ending, would you please?
Happy Halloween!
What a beautiful
happy
ending.
Halloween!
All right.
What?
To a special episode of the All the Book Show, the official podcast of the David A. Howe Public Library. I'm Nick Gunning. This week, we're bringing you a special all about voting in 2020. Earlier in the month, I reached out to the Allegany County Board of Elections staff, which includes Democratic Commissioner Michael McCormick and Deputy Commissioner Barbara Broughton, as well as Republican Commissioner Brent Reynolds and Deputy Commissioner Marcy Crawford, to see if they would let me stop by the office and sit down and just pepper them with a million questions all about voting in 2020, specifically in Allegany County. They were happy to do that, so what follows is a conversation we had on October 13th, 2020. I stopped by the office and we all sat down together, masks on, socially distanced, for the conversation that you're about to hear. So, without further ado, it's the All the Votes Show. Well, today we're coming from the Allegany County Board of Elections. My guest is Michael McCormick, who's the Democrat Elections Commissioner. Mike, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Glad to be here and glad to see you today, too.
All right. Well, thank you. And we're also joined by Marcy Crawford, who's the Republican Deputy Commissioner of Elections. Marcy, hi. How are you?
Good. How are you, Nick?
I'm pretty good. I probably have been less stressed out than you have over the last several weeks. Has it been a busy time?
That's an understatement. It's been over busy.
Okay. Well, I'm sure you can handle it. So for the last several weeks on both the podcast and just in the library, we've been trying to do what we can to make people aware of the election coming up, and we've been soliciting questions that people have. And, we get a handful of questions and we tend to just direct them to you, but we do get some questions in, so we've been trying to keep track of those, of what seems like the most confusing part or the most common questions that people had. So I appreciate you guys sitting down with me today because I wanted to just use the podcast here today to go through all of these questions that people have, and maybe they don't know who to ask, or maybe they're not sure where to get that information. So let's go through it all here. Since we've got such a serious topic, I want to start with some questions that are not as serious. So my first question is, who's your favorite Beatle?
Ringo Starr.
Wow. Okay, Mike with the surprise. Ringo Starr. Marcy, do you have a favorite Beatle?
No, that was before my time.
Before your time. Okay, well, the correct answer was Paul McCartney, but I like that Ringo Starr. What was your first car?
A Buick Opal.
Okay. Was it a fixer-upper?
It was used.
Yeah.
But it had a 4-speed in it, and that's all I cared about.
I learned to drive on my dad's like stick shift truck, and it was so hard. And by the time like I actually got my first car, which was a junky little Cavalier, and it was an automatic, it was like the easiest thing I've ever had to do because I was so used to shifting. What about you?
1976 Pontiac Sunbird.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, what color?
Lime green with white interior and 2 different color doors.
Wow, 2 different colors. Was that on purpose,
3 feet on the floor.
Was that necessity or?
A necessity.
Okay.
They didn't stay shut.
All right. Marcy, how long have you worked for the Board of Elections?
10 years. This is my 11th election cycle.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out. I keep trying to figure out when the first election I worked as an inspector was, and it's almost. I feel like it's almost 10 years. It's been a long time. But you were definitely here when I started, so it's after you.
I started in August of 10.
Of 10. Okay. What about you, Mike?
2013 was my first full year of being commissioner.
Okay. And do you remember, Mike? What was the first election that you remember voting in?
Oh, the first election I remember voting in would be Jimmy Carter.
Okay. Was it something you were excited about? Were you interested in doing that, or was it just sort of like everybody votes?
No,
so you
I
go
was
vote?
in college then.
Okay.
And I was reading up on all that stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the first time I remember going to the polls, and I was registered then and voted.
Okay. Now I remember I was just slightly too young to vote in the Bush-Gore election, but I was really interested in it, and I remember staying up really late into the night, like waiting for those results to come, and ultimately I went to sleep, thinking for sure we'd know in the morning, and of course we didn't. So that was the first time I really remember being like actively interested in, but it was the Bush-Kerry election that I actually like cast my first vote. What about you, Marcy?
1995 was the first year I voted.
Oh, okay. All right.
I remember being scared walking through the doors to vote.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like you found it an intimidating process?
I just wasn't positive of how the process was.
Yeah.
So I was a little nervous.
Well, I had a similar experience too because I didn't. That was, when it was more like you're closing the curtains behind you and you're like,
Yeah.
So yeah, I had no idea what to do. It's a lot easier now. I feel like with just a little, fill in the bubble and stuff. I find that.
My aunt was an inspector at that time.
Oh,
so
okay.
She helped ease the nerves.
Yeah, I bet that would help.
My mother was an inspector.
Was she?
Yeah.
Okay.
And she really, she enjoyed that day, and, she got to see all the different people in the township, and I think she enjoyed the check that she got.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm often assigned to the town where I live, but I've had some pretty entertaining experiences just being in other towns, hearing stories and things where I'm just, I'm not familiar with the people. So that's always a pretty entertaining day. I'm always surprised when election inspectors don't bring like books or magazines or things to do and are just like ready to, just sort of sit there and listen to stories and things, because I always load up, when it's coming, I'll always have a stack of, whether it's the library book club book I'm trying to get through or something, like that's my go-to, though I don't expect we'll have a lot of downtime this year.
No. Don't expect that at all.
Yep. I know that I've had a couple of experiences where maybe working a primary or something in a smaller polling site, and one year we had 5 voters come in all before 8 a.m. and not a single person again for the rest of the day. That was the time that I was glad that I had a stack of books with me. I'll tell you that. Let's just start with the very basics. How do you register to vote?
How do you register to
Yeah,
vote?
what's the process? If you've never voted before, you want to vote, how do you do it?
You fill out a registration form, which you can get at a local post office, a local library.
That's right.
You can get them if you're in school. The guidance counselor should have them, your town clerk, and of course here in our office.
Sure.
There's also the internet. You can get off the New York State website or even our website. There's a registration form. You scroll right down our page to where it says, are you registered to vote?
Mm-hmm.
And if not, right underneath that says registration form.
And what about if somebody's not sure if they're registered or not? Like, what's the best process for that? If they just want to know if they're registered.
There's 2 processes. They can call us. We'll look them up.
Okay.
Or they can go to go to our website, and it says, are you registered? Click on that, and it'll ask you to put in your last name, your first name, date of birth, The county you believe you're registered in, the zip code, and then it'll pull you up if you're registered, as long as you haven't moved.
Yeah.
If you enter a wrong zip code, then what you're registered at, it won't show you. So you can always call us.
Okay. And if somebody thinks they are, and maybe they're not, and they show up on election day to vote, what happens?
They're not registered?
Not registered.
They think they're registered, but they're not.
But they're not, yeah. What would happen?
Well, they couldn't vote on the machine.
Okay. We
instruct our inspectors, if there's a confrontation that's going to occur, like they're determined to vote, we'll give them an affidavit ballot. Affidavit ballot, and they'll fill out the form, and then they voted, but not on the machine.
Okay.
So that affidavit ballot will come back to the Board of Elections, and then we will research that vote.
Okay.
With the new e-poll books that we have,
yes,
you're able to pull somebody up. If they've moved into our county from a different New York county, you can type in their address, and that makes the affidavit process a little bit easier to make sure that they're in the correct district for our the county or for the town, so that their affidavit will process through and be counted.
Okay, so there is a process in place to make that happen if people are unsure. Okay. Another question that seems to be a lot of confusion on primaries. What's the difference between a primary and a general election? Who's allowed to vote in a primary or a general election? Every primary I've ever worked in, we've had people from a party who's not having a primary that day coming in and just being a little bit of confusion about why they're not allowed to vote on that day. So I guess there's two questions buried in there. Number one, when you register to vote, do you have to register for a party?
No, you do not.
Okay, that's optional. When it comes to voting in a primary, how is it decided who gets to vote in that primary?
Well, a primary is driven by the party, and if there's two people vying for that position, that forces a primary in that district. So, to vote in that specific primary, you have to be a registrant of the party that's forcing the primary.
Okay.
So there could be two conservative people vying for a town council position.
All right.
And so the only people that could vote in that conservative primary would be a member of the conservative party.
Okay. So whereas a general election is everybody voting to choose the one candidate that's on the ballot, a primary is more about each individual party setting up who they're going to have on the ballot for the general election. Okay. So for this past primary, which was a little confusing just in general because it was canceled and then uncanceled, and there was some lingering confusion about that. One of the questions that where I was working, where we had multiple times that day, was it was only a Democratic primary.
Democrat and
Libertarian, yes. And so there were people who were registered Republicans coming in to vote, and there was just some confusion about why there wasn't a Republican on the ballot. So can you speak to that a little bit, Marcy?
I believe it's because they saw presidential, so they thought they were voting for the president.
Yes.
When they didn't read the whole thing and say presidential primary.
Yeah.
You know, and that was my take on it.
Yeah.
Was they just felt that it was a presidential election, so therefore their candidate should be voted on.
Sure.
When it wasn't the actual general presidential election.
Right. And because the current president is an incumbent, was already a foregone conclusion that he was going to be the nominee, there was no need to have a Republican primary.
Correct, because there were actually two people that were going to try to go against him.
Yes.
However, they didn't make all the necessary cuts. So
had there been a challenger within a Republican Party, that would have forced a Republican primary, and there would have been votes that day. But because the president was already slotted in for that, there wasn't a Republican primary, meaning there was no Republicans on the ballot to vote that day.
Correct. Okay. So there was only one candidate for the November election. And for the Democrat position, there were more than one candidate vying for that Democrat position for the November general election for president.
All right. And I think, that's one that, like I said, has come up every time I've worked a primary. There's just been a little confusion about that. When people come to vote and are told, you're a member of this party and that party doesn't have anything on the ballot today. I feel like there's a lot of confusion there. So thanks, Marcy, for clearing that up. Let's talk about voting location. So especially, I assume now, let me ask, have you gotten a lot of new registered voters for this election in particular?
Yes.
You say that as if the volume is absurdly large. Is that true?
Yes,
okay.
It is. We have been inundated with registration forms. A lot of new registrations through the DMV imports. Mm-hmm. When you go on to the DMV website, you can register to vote if you're changing your address or whatnot. Then we get that electronically and we import it. And we have had a lot through the mail. People thinking, well, I registered a long time ago, but maybe I'm not still registered. Yeah. They don't understand that once you register, mm-hmm. unless we get something back mm-hmm. from the mail stating that they have moved, then you're still registered at that address. Yeah. So a lot of people think that, well, I registered and I voted in the last presidential election, but I haven't voted since, so I need to re-register. So we have gotten some duplications there. With any election, you're going to have some new voters, but it sounds like this is a particularly large amount of first-time voters are going to be voting in this election. Yes. So if they're not sure where to vote, how did they figure that out? Like, how do they know where their polling place is? Because I know, we'll have some people, depending on where I'm working in any given election, we'll have people who say, well, this place is way closer to my house than the place that you're telling me I have to vote. So there's a little confusion on that. It goes by where you live. Yeah. Where you registered, which district. Once you registered, you will get a voter card in mm-hmm. the mail, which we are getting ready to mail out at the end of this week. It is stated on that card. Mm-hmm. You can also go to the website, where do I vote? Click on that button, it'll tell you where to go. Okay. Once you enter your information in there. You can always call us, we're going to tell you which polling site to go to. Mm-hmm. Okay. Or you can early vote here at the... I have a whole sorts of questions about that. Yeah. Board of Elections on the early vote. Okay. So one location currently. Yeah, well, let's talk about early voting then. So how does that process work? Several questions here. How does it work? When does it start? Is it safe? Is it secure? Well, it starts October 24th. Okay. And it runs 9 days consecutively through November 1st. Is it safe? Yeah. Is it safe as any other election day with the same machine, the same process, the same, it's the same. Sure. So we harbor all the results. We don't open that file until the election night. Okay. So we have no idea how the election, we can't tell anybody any results until election night. Okay. So. And now, is there a special, do you have to apply for early voting? Can anybody just show up and do it? How does that work? If somebody lives in a, okay. Just like you're going to your poll site on election day. On the hours that are stated, which are listed on our website, and as Mike said, from October 24th through November 1st, mm-hmm. here at our office, you do not need an appointment. You can come during the open hours and we will have flags out by the road stating early voting is now. Okay. And it's just like you're going to your poll site. You're going to come in, you're going to check in with the e-poll book with myself or Barb or an inspector that may possibly be working here. And you'll go through like you were at your poll site. You'll be issued your ballot, you'll vote it on the machine, and you'll leave just like you would your poll site. Okay, so bottom line, anybody who is a registered voter in Allegany County can come here during any of those times and vote just as they would on election day. Absolutely. Okay. If they're from Belfast, they'll get the ballot that's specific to the Belfast election district. Okay. Let's talk voting in general, because with COVID-19 going around, with an increase in people voting, with probably an increase in early voting, probably an increase in mail-in voting, how is voting in general going to be different this year from other elections? Well, to begin with, this is the first presidential election we've had with early voting. Okay. Secondly, it's the first general election we've had where everyone in the county was availed the absentee ballot. Okay. And then thirdly, all our poll sites, which are ADA compliant, mm-hmm. they'll all be open from 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. November 3rd. The difference is going to be between each voter, the poll site has to be cleaned. everything that a voter touches has to be wiped down due to the COVID pandemic. So it may take a little bit longer to get through the line because you got to have your mask on.
Right.
And a mask is a must inside the poll site. You have to maintain your 6-foot distancing.
Okay.
Once you're done voting, like I said, everything that you have touched, your pens, the stylus to sign the e-poll book, the marker to mark your ballot, the booth itself that you sat at, that all has to be wiped down in between each voter. So that may take a little bit of extra time.
Okay.
So patience is a virtue.
And it's probably wise when you're coming to vote on election day to give yourself a little more time than you might.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Now you said masks are required. So if somebody shows up without a mask, what happens?
We will have masks that will be offered by the inspector. There will be an inspector at the front door with extra masks. If they have their own mask, of course, they can wear that. If they forget, we will issue them one. Mm-hmm. They get to keep it. That we don't want it back.
Sure, yeah.
However, if they come and they refuse to put a mask on, they cannot come into the poll site.
Okay.
We are required by the CDC to have everyone inside the poll site with a mask on.
So that's a regulation that's outside of Allegany County.
That is a regulation, yes.
Okay.
And in that case, they will be issued a ballot and an affidavit envelope.
Okay.
So that they can vote their ballot outside the poll site. They'll bring it back up to the door, hand it to the inspector at the door, and the inspector will put it into a special, we call it a special ballot bag, that's locked, secure during the day, that an inspector will have with them. So they'll just put it into that, and then it will come back here for count.
Okay. Mike, you mentioned more absentee ballots and that sort of thing. There's been a lot of talk about mail-in voting and all of the different steps that are being taken. Been a lot of talk about security of that as well. So I wonder if both of you could weigh in a little bit on election security. Is voting early, is voting with an absentee ballot, voting by mail, is that a secure process here in Allegany County?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, we work very hard, Barb and Marcy and all our inspectors. The protocols we've set up and the protocols that are set up to us from the State Board of Elections, we follow rigorously. Is everything secure? In my estimation, right to the final hours of election evening, when we have the sheriff deputies actually go out and bring back the results, I mean, we can't get any securer than having our fine sheriff deputies, you know, do those return routes to us.
Okay.
So that's just one thing that we're very happy about.
Okay.
And as far as absentees, yes, they are secure. If you've requested an absentee, you can request it by phone, you can request it by mail, by email, and there's a portal that you can also request an absentee. Once those absentees are mailed out to the voter and the voter votes them, there's 3 options on returning them. They can return them to our office. They can bring them right in. We have a metal box for them to drop them in.
Okay.
So nobody sees who is dropping what ballot in there. They'll drop them in, and then periodically through the day, we have to empty that, of course. We timestamp them. Then they are recorded into our computer that they've been received.
Okay.
And then they are sorted by district, not by town, by district, and put into a locked, fireproof filing cabinet. And it's locked every night.
Okay.
So no one can get to them. And they stay in that filing cabinet until the day of starting to count, which is November 10th, 7 days after Election Day.
Okay.
So, and we do have a lot of people who are nervous about mailing their ballot in, and that is why we have the drop box.
Okay.
We have an inside drop box, and if it's after hours, we have a secured drop box outside the building that actually has a video surveillance on it.
Oh, okay.
So if someone drops it in there, we can see them drop it into the box, and anybody goes near that box, we can also see them.
Okay.
So.
Well, on the topic of security, I mean, Marcy, what do you think about, talk of, voter fraud, voter suppression, all that? Are these things that you're concerned about? Do you guys feel like that's all covered?
In our little county, I don't have any concerns with that.
Okay.
Because number one, you can't get 2 votes.
Right.
Even though you get an absentee ballot, And say you go to the poll site on election day and you vote in person.
Yeah.
In-person collection is done first. So then when Barb and I and the commissioners and our clerks, whoever is helping with the opening of absentees, are sitting down, Barb and I are across from each other. I read the name off the envelope. Barb says, nope, they voted in person.
Okay.
Then it's written on that envelope, voted in person. That envelope is set aside and never opened.
Okay.
So no two votes, no voter fraud there.
Okay. Well, that's, because people have asked me this because, people know that I've been an election inspector for a long time. And one of the things that I feel like is so helpful, particularly about New York system, is that you have the paper ballot as a backup. I mean, you have two different ways to tally that, and those numbers, they have to match,
Yes, they do.
And that to me is a really, I feel good knowing that because, I mean, right, it's a double check.
And the process after elections with the results is Barb and I go over the tapes and we have to do ballot reconciliation and put it all on a spreadsheet for the state. And so we're pretty confident that in Allegany County, I can't answer for any place else other than here, but as far as voter fraud, not in Allegany County, security, we're pretty good.
Tell me a little bit about your staff. So I know, Marcy, you're the Republican Deputy Commissioner, Mike, the Democratic Commissioner. How does that work as far as, who's working on all of these processes? Do you always have a member of both parties involved? How does that happen?
Well, that's the goal.
Yeah.
Republican and Democrat both face a problem or the solution. The problem or the solution is bipartisan. Mm-hmm. We all talk about it or do what we have to do to so everyone agrees here. That's one of the rules in the Board of Elections. If the commissioners don't agree, if Brent and I don't agree on something, it doesn't get started.
Okay.
But we've had with even the former late Commissioner Rick Hollis, we always seem to work together, and Barb and Marcy do a great job out front. They split up their duties, but their duties can be interchanged too.
Yeah.
So I think it works really well.
What about as far as the machines, like machine techs, that sort of thing? People who work on the machines. How does that work?
There's two techs, and one Republican, one Democrat.
So right down the line, you always
down the line, everything has to be bipartisan. We have two clerks, one Democrat, one Republican.
Okay.
Our machines are Dominion image cast machines.
Okay.
And the techs, before they can become technicians, have to go to the Dominion training school, which is a 3-day event where they spend 3 days with Dominion looking at these machines, taking off the scanners. They can maintain the machine on election day. That's the requirement that our techs have.
Okay. And they travel around on election day together so that if anything has to be worked on the machines, it is done on a bipartisan basis.
That's great. Let's talk a little bit about some of the other roles that people might have in the election. There's also been a lot of talk in the news about poll watching. What's the process for being a poll watcher? What does it mean? What is a poll watcher? How do you become one?
Well, a poll watcher is someone that's going to be in a poll site.
Okay.
But to be a poll watcher, you have to get a poll watcher certificate from county chairman, or the candidate,
or the secretary of the party.
The secretary of the party.
Okay.
So you can be deemed a poll watcher with a certificate signed by those 3 individuals. And as a poll watcher, you can go into the poll site.
You can ask if a certain voter has been in to vote. Okay. Normally a poll watcher will get a list of voters from our office. The poll watcher certificate that Mike mentioned happened to be signed. Once they walk into a poll site as a poll watcher, they hand that certificate to the inspectors.
Okay.
That does not leave that poll site. So they can't get a poll watcher certificate and go to Candidatia 2 and then go to Candidatia 1.
I see.
They would have to have 2 poll watcher certificates,
okay.
1 per district that they're going to.
Okay.
They can come and go during the day as they want. They can ask if a certain voter has been in. They can watch the process. They can challenge a voter if they don't feel the voter should be voting in that district, but they can't touch anything.
Okay.
They can't say, hey, I want to look at your list. I want to look at your e-poll book and see.
So it has to have pre-approval, and a poll watcher certificate is only good for the poll site that it was specifically issued for.
Correct.
Okay. We've been talking about election inspectors. Can you tell me a little bit about what is an election inspector? How do you become one? What's involved?
Well, election inspector is pivotal to the whole election process. To become an election inspector, you call the office, and we set up a training date for you. And the training is approximately 4 hours long, and you get paid for it. Prior to the election, if we need that inspector at a certain poll site, we'll get a hold of them, he or her, and they'll be assigned to a poll site.
Okay.
For this year, we did our last training on Saturday, this past Saturday. So anyone who wants to be an inspector now, they can call. We'll mark them as a prospective inspector for next year.
Okay.
And they'll get a card when we set up training for next year, 2021.
Okay.
But for right now,
Oh, yeah, for this year's set, though,
yes.
Going forward, if people are interested.
Yes, they can call us. We'll set them up.
Okay. Like I was saying, my first major memory of like waiting for election results was Bush Gore, which of course was not decided that night. When do you expect to know the results specific to Allegany County?
Specific to Allegany County?
When will you feel like the votes have been counted and certified for Allegany County?
In our past history, polls close at 9 o'clock. Typically, we have some of the results by 10 o'clock, but the total county, in my history here, about 11:30.
Okay.
Quarter after 11.
With the machines,
Yeah.
because we read the results off the cards that are in the machine on election night. Mike is right. The latest with those machines has been like 11:30.
Okay.
However, those are unofficial.
Yeah.
And then you still have unofficial results after absentees and affidavits are opened, and
Okay.
that's a week later.
Okay.
7 days later. And then we don't certify with the state until we have all of our numbers together, which is usually right before Thanksgiving, correct, Mike?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then the commissioners sign the certification from us, we send it to the state, and then the state's certification date for this year is December 15th.
Okay.
And that's the final.
Okay. So it's likely that there will be, do you think a few weeks in there before you, because I'm just curious, because with all of the absentees or possibly several affidavit ballots that day, like you can't even look at those for a week. Is that what you're saying?
We have to research the affidavits to make sure that they count, so that that 7 days later we can open the affidavits. Same with absentees. We have to make sure that the signatures on the envelopes correspond with what we have on file.
Okay.
And if they don't, we have to contact the voter if there's enough time from the time we receive for any kind of correction. Then once we open them, and this year we have had the most absentee ballots go out. We're over 3,000.
Wow.
And in a normal presidential election, I think in 16 was 1,200.
Okay, so yeah,
and then
that's a big jump.
So it is a big jump, and we have received at last count, I think it was over 750. That was last Friday, and we've received a whole bunch more. So the count of those may take us a little longer than what we normally would anticipate.
The machines that's public information that evening.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
At 11 or 11:30, the public has access to what the machines read that day. So
they can go to the Allegany County website. There'll be a button right on the top of the county website. Click on that, and it'll take them right to the results.
Okay.
For that day.
So you have
that day, and the early voting is merged into that.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's typically the results, unless it's a close election.
Well, that was my question, just because with a potential of 3,000 votes coming in a week later, I mean, that even on a small scale, that could seriously alter what you're looking at election night, right?
It will, but just the way voting occurs, the absentees usually follow the same curve as the general.
Okay, so as far as like whatever percentages are, you see those patterns.
We have had it come down to absentees for local.
Sure.
For local.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Wow. Well, it sounds like it's been a busy season and will continue to be a busy season in the weeks even after election for you guys. If people have questions that we didn't cover here, and we covered a lot, so thank you both for your time, because we really really covered a lot of questions here. If there are other questions outside of this, what's the best way for people to ask those questions?
They can call us directly here at our numbers, the 585-268-9294 or 9295.
Okay.
And we'll be happy to answer their questions. They can always go to the Board of Elections website. We have a lot of information on there. Barb does great putting that page together. And they can also go to the state website for a lot of answers.
Okay.
And I want to add that we lean on our inspectors so big that day. And we've gotten to know them really well, and they do a great job in all these 33 poll sites that we have. They get there early, they're there all day, and it's our wish that the voters that day show them the respect that they deserve, because they're there for 16 hours, and they've probably heard every story twice. And, but they have a job to do, and they've got their game face on. And if they don't want to chat with the voter, voting, we all take it seriously. And one thing I want to add is, in this environment we're all in now, it's hard to claim to own anything. Like, it's just hard to do it. But that's one thing we have left. You own your vote. If you're a registered voter, no one can take it from you. It's all private. It's all secure. And I just think that's should be mentioned. It's one thing we all own.
Well, I appreciate it. That is a good reminder. And I want to say to you guys, and really your office in general, though we don't know each other personally, we run into each other, every time I work an election. But I just wanted to say that I've always been impressed with the fact that you have an office that's half Republicans, half Democrats, and you guys seem to work so well together. And while I'm sure you have ideological differences, I've never seen that play out in how things are managed and how things are run. So I think that that's really commendable, especially given, the divisive nature of the world at the moment, that you guys seem to take really seriously, putting all that aside and just working together to make sure we have a safe, secure election. So I want to thank you just as a voter and a resident of the county for that. And I also want to thank you for your time today, because, like I said, I really do appreciate it. And I think it's so important to get some of these questions answered, because I know just from a library standard, working with people coming in asking questions about all sorts of things, that a lot of people don't feel comfortable coming up to a desk and asking a question. So anything that we can do to answer some of those questions ahead of time, I think is really important. And I am appreciative of the posters and the things that have gone up from your office to answer those questions as well. So anyway, thanks again.
Thank you very much.
My thanks once again to the staff at the Allegany County Board of Elections, particularly Democratic Commissioner Michael J. McCormick and Republican Deputy Commissioner Marcy Crawford. I enjoyed the conversation, and I hope that helps to shine some light on some of the questions you might have during this voting season. The Allegany County Board of Elections is located at 8 Willits Avenue in Belmont, New York. To reach the Republican commissioners by phone, call 585-268-9294. That's 585-268-9294. For the Democrat commissioners, 585-268-9295. That's 585-268-9295. Now, if you live outside of Allegany County, a lot of this information is not going to apply specifically to you, but the David A. Howe Library is happy to help with this, so please reach out to us at wellsville@stls.org. You can find us on Facebook at David A. Howe Public Library, Twitter at All the Books Show, or go ahead and give us a call, and we will point you in the right direction for whatever state or county you happen to be listening in today. You can also find information online at rockthevote.org. Once again, thanks to my guests, and hope you'll join us next week for a regularly scheduled episode of the All the Books Show. Thanks.